today's new and Let's Make It Awesome, and we are here at the St. Genevieve.
The Louis Paul Duke house. And Louis came to St. Genevieve in 1759. Our town was originally 3 miles down the river, and it was founded around 1735, 1785. We had a terrible flood, and the buildings washed away, many of the homes and their church, and they decided time to move. So they moved here 3 miles up, 3 miles north, and they, around 1788 is when this house was built by Louis and his wife. And he came from Montreal because the British were burning Montreal and chasing all of the French out. They didn't like the French politically, and because...
Was this where he slept and that was where he sat?
Yes, this is called a banc lit. It's a bench bed. It's like a futon. You fold it up, you hook it here. This all folds up. It's a bench during the day. At nighttime, it opens up, and he would have slept in here. Bearskin rug, because it gets real cold in here in the wintertime. Now let me show you something interesting about the construction of the house. I don't know if you noticed, but these are vertical logs, up and down. Come stand here. These are vertical logs. The French built their houses like this. This is from Normandy, 1600s, and they put these huge Norman truss, that great big A-frame up there, that held the houses stable. And they had thatched roofs, which is grass and mud, very heavy, so they needed a strong truss. In 1811, when the New Madrid earthquake occurred, these houses with the logs up and down, and they're filled in with chinking called bousillage, these houses shook like this. American log houses stacked one log on top of each other. The chinking cracked and the houses collapsed. These did not. Chimneys collapsed and some of the windows were broken, but the structure of the house remained. This is very, these homes were built sturdy. Like this for, this is, and they try to keep as warm as they can. So after dinner in the evening, they clear the table off and they fold the top of the table up. It comes up like this, and it has a bench there. They'd scoot up closer to the fire, put their chairs around, and that's how the family would spend their evening. All these furnishings are from Montreal. They were purchased in the 1950s. There was an antique dealer who had a lot of Canadian furnishings, not early American, Canadian, French Canadian furniture.
And that's who we are.
French Canadian, yes.
Yeah.
Like the other one, it's just a different style, but that's from the 1700s as well. So when they would entertain here, they moved all this furniture into the corner and they put a drape up. They moved the furniture out from the middle of the room, and they bring fiddles. And they raise this light, the chandelier, there's little grooves, they raise it up. Because the French love to dance, they love to party and sing and drink wine, and they bring food, and they love to gamble. They play card games like tarot. Well, that's why Louis loved it. It was so big and very masculine, it's not fancy. And it was made in this area. It's beech nut walnut, and that is in this area. Also, 1785, when the floodwaters came up, he had to get his slaves to get that out because he treasured it. So it started coming up in the house and he got it out. These pieces, see how much different they look. This is from Canada. This is very French Canadian, both of them. And what tells you that is this diamond shape. That was very common at that time, in that time period, to have that diamond shape pattern on their furniture. Look at this piece. This was probably in a fancier house that's in better shape, but you know.
That's what Grandma kind of does.
It's what she loved. But Grandma's French Canadian, and that's the kind of furniture she loves. And huge
But
furniture.
hers doesn't have all of those under really.
She still goes with the lines and that whole shape
Yeah.
of stuff. She just likes
Yeah.
that.
There's different styles.
Not necessarily, she likes this kind of like
Yes.
with this.
So remember when you were asking me about those spoons? This is a box with salt in it. They mine salt about 7 miles down the river in Saline Creek. It runs into the Mississippi down by St. Mary's. And they put the salt in here after they let it evaporate from the water, let the water evaporate. And then when they would have dinner at night, they had little salt cellars about this big. Remember me telling you that? They
Some
take
were
the salt.
Scoopers and
Yeah.
some were like little teaspoons.
Those little teaspoons were to sprinkle the salt on their food, and this is where they would keep it. And then when they had their meals at night, that's where they would get their salt from. This was modern for that time, and she did not ever cook again. This was where her slave ladies cooked for her. Huge fireplace, because they had to feed a lot of people. That's a warming oven back there. This is a rotisserie, a sign of wealth. That would sit in the fire. They turned the handle, and that was how they cooked their meat. They loved coffee. The coffee beans were brought up from New Orleans, from South America originally. This is a toaster. Of course, they had the long handle fry pans. This is what the Native Americans had taught the Africans how to make cornbread, to put these, with these hooks, stick the ear of corn on there, put it over the fire, roast it, dry it out. Then they put it in here and they would grind it up and they would make fresh cornbread.
I was gonna say oatmeal.
No, cornbread. It's from corn. This is a dough box. The French love their wheat. That was one of the things they grew and traded, and they grew wheat grows great around here. This was a dough box. They put the dough in there to rise. Potty chair. Pierre Bolduc and his wife had 8 children. So the slave ladies might have her children in here, and they would be watching the master's children. They put them on the toilet and put a rope around them. They'd have a pan that would sit in here. When they go to the bathroom, they take it and empty it and throw it over the stockade fence into the street, because that's what they did with their chamber pots. They were pots that they went to the bathroom in the house, and they throw their human waste into the streets. They didn't have outhouses. So it was pretty nasty and stinky, and across the street were all the cows and pigs for the town. There were no homes over there. Because they had these huge kitchen gardens, they had to have these big fences to keep the animals out so that they would have something to eat, because the cows and the pigs would get in there and eat all the vegetables. Any questions? Well, this is how it was when those people lived there in the...
I got one question. What did they use?
That's called a mortar and pestle. And they take their herbs and salt and just different things, and you grind it up. And that's how they would season their food.
Is that like a butter maker?
No, that is, they keep water in there. Oh yeah, that's yes, that's a butter churn. And this, they would keep water in case the fire would get out of control. They always had to have water by the fire. That's how they dry their lettuce. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Yeah, something I would never have thought of at that time period. This is how they made candles, of course. And they made candles from animal fat and beeswax, because they needed, it was dark in these houses in the winter and in the evenings. Okay, we're going to move on. These furnishings are all French from 1820s, 1830s. Nothing belonged to the family, because this house changed hands a number of times. So let me tell you that story. So the young couple moved in here in 1820, and they had another baby. So they had 3 children. By 1826, both of the parents passed away. And Grandma Catherine came over and raised the children until 1837. And the Sisters of Loretto then came here, and they bought the house. They were sent to St. Genevieve to teach. And there was a little small brick building next door that had been the wine shop for Rene Lamiere, the gentleman who lived here. The building was still there. The Sisters of Loretto had a school for girls. There was no education for girls. The Catholic Church didn't have a school yet. So they taught little girls for 11 years. 1948, they are called to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico and build this beautiful Loretto chapel. 2 of them went there, 2 of them stayed here and started our parochial school with the Catholic Church. So it was sold a number of times till the mid to late 1850s, and a gentleman in town, Mr. Deshman Day, decided was up for sale. This would be a great place for a hotel. There were no hotels in St. Genevieve. The town's growing. He adds a second story, puts a big porch across the front and back, adds a dining room and a kitchen. He adds a second story to the brick building, and it went all the way to the sidewalk. That all as tall as this 2-story brick building. And he had a hotel until the early 1900s. Then it became apartments and a rooming house. And then in 1818, that brick building next door was sold to 2 gentlemen who had a blacksmith shop. Because there were still a lot of horses around here, and all the farmers used horses. They didn't have electric or automatic powered tractors. So they did well until the late 1920s. 2 other brothers in town decided, we're getting all these automobiles, we need to have an auto parts and auto repair business. So they bought both buildings, and there were still apartments upstairs that people lived in on the second floor of this. They turned it into an auto repair shop. They sold Willys and Pontiacs, and that whole grassy area where that apple tree was full. They had a garage to repair cars and full of cars.
Is that apple tree what I picked that apple off of?
Yes, but that was not there in those days. That was all nothing but cars. It was a mess. And so in 1960, they put the business up for sale. Well, the Colonial Danes that bought that house want this one too, because this is a granddaughter's house. So they buy it in 1961, and they got rid of all the additions because they wanted it to be true to what the story was.